back in the 20s and 30s. And just before the 40s, it started to go downhill. Fishing almost everywhere. Beautiful. Golf links. The mountains were undisturbed. No housing situation. None of this building like you got today is running away. But you know, when you walk to the rivers, it can almost make a grown man cry to see what it looks like today. You can start with Al Winter's Pond. Fish in there, beautiful ice skating. It was clear, it was beautiful. Well, throughout the years, silt filled the pond. It's never been the same, never at all. The Mahwah River, you can take that for instance. Most anywhere you can see fishing, all of the time. Today, I don't think you'll see any fishing. If you walk on any bridge, you'll never see a single fish. You wonder where they all went. You'll see an oil slick going down the river, which is bad. Now, going back now, in the early 20s to about 1929, I remember that Mahwah didn't have too many paved roads. Island Road, I walked at the school, went to this school right here. It was a dirt road. The only paved road I've seen around here was 202, West Mahwah Avenue, down here to the Franklin Turnpike. Franklin Turnpike was paved. And of course, Kragner, Bugs and them did some building up there, tunnel up and all that. Of course, they paved the roads there. But there weren't many paved roads here until in the early 30s, when the WPA started to build some of the roads around using the slag from the bridge to build the roads. They made pretty good roads. They did a lot. It wasn't bad at all. So now I want to tell you something about starting at the state line on Franklin Turnpike where it begins. I have slides here. I'll go into the slides soon, but I want to tell you about there was the alignment of the Franklin Turnpike. Franklin Turnpike didn't always go alongside of where you see the Shoreline bus station. That was a big swamp down in there, a real big swamp. I'd say near where the bridge is on the left side there, it must have been 8 to 10 feet below the level of the road, the swamp in there. That was all filled in, and then the Shoreline bus station, the station or garage, whatever you want to call it, filled that all in and made it level with the trolley tracks. The trolley tracks come in there in 1912 to 1927. 27 pulled it up. I have the route here. I'll show you that on the slides. But what they did is you can still see the old abutment of where the bridge went across, right close to the railroad, right across from where the bus line station is, the Shoreline bus station is. That's where the old turnpike used to go. It went all the way up to just before the Honda dealer in Mahwah, which is built on a swamp. That was a swamp there, and I mean, it was something that if you stepped off of one of those bogs, I think it disappeared. That's how bad it was in spots. Watercress in there, beautiful. It's good trapping there when you're a kid too. But I remember the old Christie House. Christie House was over near, there's a spring over near the trolley tracks. It was quite a ways off of Franklin Turnpike in there. And it was in ruins already. The plaster was all down, the windows were broken. It was ready to collapse, and I remember it. There was a road stand over here, well, I better not go that far, right near Fox Lane, just above Fox Lane. On the left side, there was a little road before Christie Avenue. There was a little cottage in there. Oscar Suffern lived in that cottage. And as we went up to the pond there to swim. We had to sneak in there. We used to get chased out of there all the time. And it was a nice, beautiful pond there. That's right where the, what is that club that's in there?
It's still there.
It is, the pond's still there?
Yeah,
All right. It's still up there in Fox's. That was a nice pond. Grant used to get his ice there. What was the name?
Foxwood Lane, right?
Foxwood Lane, right. That house was there till about 1935, 35 or 36. And I don't know what it just became, well, it got in a deplorable condition. Somebody must have set it afire because there was no debris left, and that was gone. Fox Lane, there was a road that used to cut off of Fox Lane and go into Suffern. You can go into New York State by making a left turn. As a matter of fact, the boundary line was right there. Where RZ Lumber is, RZ Lumber Supplies are, that was a high bank. That bank was, at least near the river, I would say at the sidewalk level, it must have been 8 to 10 feet high. And in later years, all you seen was a big billboard up on top there because it was an ideal location for you to see that sign. Later, of course, the sign came down, and the Suffern Bottling Works, Greenstein, had the Schaefer there, Suffern Bottling Works. Well, they cut that whole bank down, and what you see there now is, it's right down to the sidewalk level, and RZ is in there right now. But when the Burkle place was there, we call it Red City Burkle place, there were several families lived there. Starkeys lived there, the Blascos lived there, and also the Pollocks lived there. I know all their names, but I'm not going to go into their names. I know every one of them. But behind there, now that was level, that was high. It started at the level of Fox Lane, and it went straight. But if you follow that horizontal plane, it dropped down by the river. It was very, very high. But there was a big, deep hole between the trolley tracks and the Burkle place where the houses were. Well, in that dump, there must have been about 7 or 8 automobiles, mostly 1923 and 1924 Chevrolets. Just rolled down the bank and they laid on the bottom of the bank. That was my supply and my brother's supply for our 1923 Chevrolet until 1939 when the junkies come in and they took all our supplies away. And there was nothing. All the iron disappeared. And of course these junkies did a lot of damage. I'll show you later what happened at the Hopper Grist Mill. They cut down and destroyed a great artifact there. I'll go into that later. I got that on the slides here. So there were also on Fox Lane there was a tin shed, which was a sort of a waiting shed for the trolley. You could take the trolley there from that point into Suffolk. I have a picture of the trolley, but I didn't put it in the slides here. I have pictures home. Of course, I won't go over that. Now, there's something that bothered me. When I read the book, The History of Mahwah, 1700 to 1776, it left out a justice of the peace known as Judge Price. Does anybody in here remember Judge Price? You remember him. He had special numbers, 375, 875, 1475, different, you know. Yeah, well, yeah, he was something. But Judge Price, you know, it's a mystery. I've been trying to get some information on him. I believe he could have been a son of Rodman Price. Now, it mentioned something about somebody by the name of Gouverneur, or Governor, how do you pronounce it, is a first name. There's a few English people have that name. Gouverneur Price on Franklin Turnpike. And it said he lived in a house that was formerly, what was their name again? Winter's house. Winter's house. That burned down, and then they rebuilt the house, and he lived in that house until he died. That was next to, you know where, what's his name? Charles Willow had his plumbing supply there. Frank Rawhart had a garage there. What's there today?
J.D. Plumbing now.
J.D. Plumbing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, right next to that, where these new buildings are, beautiful buildings. There's a whole row of beautiful stores in there. I think there's a bank in there, printing press, a lot of things in there. But that's where it was located. It had a driveway that went in and around. Of course, anytime a state trooper picked somebody up for speeding right into Judge Price's, right away he put on his black coat, his robe. In about 15, 20 minutes, it was all over with. He either paid or he went to Hackensack, one of the two. But he was all right. He wasn't bad. But nobody nobody seems to remember. He was the last justice of the peace. There were no others. That was in the elective office, and they just never elected any justice of the peace. He had a young lad working for him. He was an assistant, and his name was let's see what was for Hector Thomas Chisholm. He assisted him because he was kind of feeble. He was quite an elderly man. Well, so much for Judge Price, anyway. I don't want to tell you about some of the stories that happened there with the police bringing them in, but I do know a lot of them. It won't take too much time. Then up above, let's go up. There was near King Street there. I don't remember this, but I read it, and it's also in Bristow's Home Store News there, the column he runs, that there was an old lumber mill just opposite King Street on Franklin Turnpike. And the man that operated was Louis Gross. Now, that's before my time. But I was able to make a connection because Louis Gross also had a lumber mill, not a lumber mill, but a sawmill in Ramapo in the lower village, the lower foundry. And I remember that when the sawdust heaps were, 20, 30 feet high. It was just about going out of operation when I remember it, but the sawdust was still there, the machines were still in there, but it wasn't operating. He made railroad ties. In later years, about 1935 or 34 or 35, he was murdered. Louis Gross, his body was found between the wall, as you go down over the railroad track into the lower village. The road drops quite sharply. His body was lodged between the stone wall of the ramp off of the bridge and the pattern shop of the Ramapo Foundry Wheel Works. Jim Ransom said that he was going by there at that particular time when there was a lot of commotion there, and that the body was found that very day. And he knew about it. And he was amazed that I found out who the man's name was and all. I told him about it. It was Gross. And I did some checking. I went over once to the lumber company, Christopher Lumber up in Allendale. I tried to find out about a lumber sawmill over here in Mahwah. And of course, their family was in the business a long time. And he says, geez, the only one I know, but not in Mahwah. He says there's a fellow had a portable set up. But he says, I know an Italian fella that run the sawmill up in Ramapo. He says, by the name of Gross, Louis Gross, he says, that's his name. And I said, well, gee, the connection between the Mahwah sawmill and the one in Ramapo. So he had both of them. Of course, he got in trouble, I guess, in Central Valley there. You know, in those days, bootlegging going on and stuff like that. You can't fool around with it. That's bad. Well, so much for that. Then just above there was Viola Tonges. The Tonges family had a little road stand where the trolley tracks crossed Franklin Turnpike. There's a first aid squad almost on the property that the Tonges owned. So, as a matter of fact, you can still see where the railroad trolley tracks crossed. That's right near Mahwah Road, not East Mahwah Road, but Mahwah. Isn't that right? Mahwah Road there, where Dr. Liddy used to be. Just above that, north of that, is where it went at an angle. And of course, if you go in the direction of Ramsey, it come in close to that would be West Airmont Road. Road. There's a bridge there, sort of a tunnel-like. The trolley tracks came in close there, and then they followed the railroad for a good long distance. Well, then there was dairies that disappeared. And not only that, but let me go into this. McKee Sandbank. Before McKee got in there and started taking the sand out of there were beautiful rolling hills. The cows used to be up on there all the time. There was J.Q. Young Dairies. We bought milk until about 1951, was it? 52. I lived in Mahwah yet, on Island Road. back from the service. And we had deliveries there made by Frank, you remember what his last name was?
Frank Banks.
Bates, that's right. Banks, right. Frank Banks, that's right. I have it written down, but I didn't look at it. And of course, Cook's disappeared, and so did J.Q. Young's dairy. And then, of course, Route 17 didn't do us any favor, really. It brought in a lot of traffic. It cut in the back of Sunset Lake. I got a picture of Sunset Lake here, somebody swimming in it. And it did so destroy some of my favorite fishing spots down near where the mason jar is, in that area, across the river there, near the mill site, the Hopper Mill site. Some beautiful little ponds in there, and it's some great fishing there. Now to take you back up to a place up there in Stag Hill. I better show that on the slide here. Going up, here's what confused me, and I couldn't believe it. I've always known Stag Hill Road to come in from 202. You know where there's a church there now? Well, there's a school there too. I forget the name of that school.
That one?
No, Devonshire.
Devonshire School. Just below Devonshire School is where Stag Hill Road began. That's where I always known it to be. And it crossed the river. There was a bridge across the river. The bridge is gone, and this road has been renamed the Clove Brook Road. And I was amazed to find that Stag Hill Road now is on the other side of the river, and it comes out near where the Ford plant overhead pass is. And there's other roads up in there. There was a speakeasy up on top of that hill too, above this, what do you call it? El Rio. El Rio was on the corner. Up above was the Rudders, Camp Rudders. There was a speakeasy there during the Prohibition days. When Route 17 come through, it cut through the heart of a settlement of the mountain people. It dislodged them. They had to move deeper and further back in the mountains, but they were originally, the greatest percentage of them was what along the route of where Route 17 is today. Well, I remember the old Hoogenkorf Road as it crossed by, they called it the White Bridge or the Darlington Bridge, right where the mason jar is today. They used to call that Fritzy Smith's, and then they called it Brown's Cabins. The road went across, and then it turned where Reinauer's gas station is, went right across where the Ford plant was. There's beautiful homes over there. What's his name? William Kay lived there. He had a beautiful house there. He had to leave. The greenhouses were there. As a matter of fact, there's a house that Francis Furman lived in that is now on a corner of Sherwood Avenue and pardon? Oh, that house was moved from Hoogenkorf Road to Sherwood and Warhol Avenue, and it's there yet today. You can see it. It's in good shape. Greenhouses, they're gone. They were there, and there was another house, a large house, a stone house that went. Two more up toward the river where the Black Bridge was, the Butterworth's house, and the other one was DeRee's. That was a beautiful house. And of course the road went to Hilburn, and there was a clubhouse there. There was also tennis courts there on the road that went to Hilburn. And before they built the caddy house where they have it, they had a boxcar for the caddy house, where they kept the clubs in, right at the north end of the tennis courts. And of course, Route 17 wasn't completed until 1935. And that was the last piece of Route 17 that was completed over there. Now in Green Valley there was a little church there that was moved into Mahwah on Grove Street. It's there right now on Grove Street in Mahwah. It's been improved, it's been enlarged. You can still see where the location of it was. It was just above Havmeyer's Pond, no more than about 100 yards and on to your left. You can still see where the church was. It was a settlement of the mountain people in there. Sufferings lived there, the DeGroats lived there. And later on, John Delmar bought a piece of land, property there, and there was a spring there, and he was building a house there out of the stone that was in the area. I went up there with my brother and my sister-in-law and my wife once to look at it, and he had quite a bit of it up, but it never got finished. I wanted to buy that land out there once, and I was discouraged by the building inspector Mullins, so I never bought there. And there's a piece of property to the right of that was Ace DeGroat's property. That was a nice piece of land in there too. And he never sold to Havmeyer. Havmeyer wanted to buy that, but he would never sell it to him. All right, so rather than go into much more of this here, I'll show you what I have here, and you're going to enjoy this, I'm sure. And let's see. I need some power here. There's much more I have, but I can't go into detail because that would be good for hours. Let me know if everybody can see this when I get this jacket. I'm going to get it higher, huh? Let me have something to bring that up. A little higher. Later on, oh, that's ideal. Okay, the reason I have this picture here, this shows that this is at the state line. We're looking sort of southeast. Your Shoreline bus station, you see where that bus is standing there? That's your Shoreline bus station. And to the right of these poles over here, these poles right here, is where the trolley tracks ran. From here right on up to there. This was all a swamp in here, a very deep swamp. There was a pond in the back here also. The trolley went across at an angle up to the railroad bank near the where you go underneath on 202. But it followed the railroad bank north all the way into Suffern. Now, there's 202 here. Here's 202 here, where the trolley crossed right here, right out here, and it came right up this bank, right up alongside this bank, but along where the road is here. It didn't cross the railroad.
It went right along where the road is now?
Right, exactly, along the bank of the railroad, as close to the bank as, it was possible. But it came at an angle, and then all the way to Suffern.
That south lane was the trolley track.
That's right, yes.
Went too far from the original trolley right away.
Yep. And right here, where these signs are, right here now, is where the old turnpike used to go. The old turnpike went right through here, right on over, and right straight up, and came out over near where the Honda is over there, up near the A&P. Well, what happened was they built a bridge. This was a brand new bridge. Was built right here above the short line. But here, at this location here, where this arrow is pointing, is where there was a Jimmy Fogel's repair and the gas station here. Jimmy Fogel ran that until about 1926. Let's see, no, 1929.
Is that right on the bank of the road now?
Right. Well, there's a Chrysler garage over here.
It was Chrysler's
Tidy
car.
Tidy car today, okay. But right here, where this arrow is here now, is where that garage was located.
parking lot.
Yeah, that's right, it's a parking lot there. And next to it was a little road stand, and next to that was Chris Hink's vegetable and fruit stand. And Chris Hink, he lived up on the Ridge Road, up on the ridge. He was the next to the last house on Ridge Road, going, that would be going southwest, going toward Ramsey. Now, next one. This gives you a better view of where that about where that was. And State Line Garage had that. Sylvester Personius ran that, and his father used to come from the stone quarry in Suffern, and he'd operate this gas station. It was an Esso gas station, and he operated that at night. But this was all in here on the other side, right from where I'm pointing my arrow over to this direction. It was all swamp, and I mean it was really swamp. Now this is above where I told you the trolley track ran along those high tension lines. In the back of the short line bus station, here's the abutments that held the iron rails that the tracks were on, the trolley tracks. They went right over this way, behind Ardsy's, and all the way up into Mahwah. I crossed that many times on foot. Incidentally, the rails that were on this railroad are now on the Trans-Siberian Railroad in Asia. Here's the abutment. Now, that tidy car is right here. This was a big hole in here, a dump. For years and years, it was nothing but a dump. Well, that was part of the swamp. When they put this road through here, of course, they just went along and they left that big hole there, and everybody dumped in it. It was a big dump. But as you can see, that's where the old turnpike bridge used to be, right here. You're getting a reflection here, but this is the railroad bridge here that crosses the Mahwah River. And this is the abutment right here where the old bridge was before the turnpike moved over to the new bridge, which I was standing on when I took this picture.
What was the reason for building the new bridge? The other one was,
It probably was a wooden bridge, and it was deteriorating, so you could still keep the road open, and it was easier to build a bridge alongside of it. They do that today quite often. They build a new bridge and maybe 50 feet or 100 feet away, and then just straighten the road out. It did straighten the road a little there. Here's Ardsy's now. This is where the old Burkle place used to be. Now that bank, at this point here, was just about below the windows here, and it slanted down toward the brook here. There were still short line buses about here, and Ardsy's here. Now, Burkle place was real high up here, but it was level. If you figured it from the high point here, if you went over this way on a straight horizontal plane, that was quite flat up there. And the Burkle farm ran all the way across up to the turnpike. But when this road cut through, that cut the Burkle place down in size quite a bit. Now here, this place here, I guess the Yeomans, it was known as Yeomans, Hoppers, old Hoppy had this, before the diner, that was a gas station there, and they sold hot dogs and, soda and refreshments there. Then what happened was, before that even, DeLugo's had that. And then Max Hahn was Charlie Hoffman's uncle, and his mother, of course, she was widowed. They had this place here. It wasn't a diner. It was a garage and only a little road stand. In later years, though, George Homa had a diner here near the river. It was in a pretty precarious location. It was bad. Cars could run in the river